Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the NBA DFS Core Pick video for today, Tuesday, February 6th. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over a recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they ultimately ended up turning out for both DraftKings and FanDuel. And then after that, we'll get moved over to the injuries in play for today's slate. Overall, there's 7 games in total. On the DraftKings side, it's only a 6-game main slate, but for FanDuel, it is the full 7 games. So we will have the last game of the night over there. And then after that, we'll get moved over to both DraftKings and FanDuel and talk about my core picks for today. So it's going to be one player at each position. So point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. But without further ado, we'll get started with a recap of yesterday's picks. So on the DraftKings side, at the point guard position, we had James Harden, $8,700. Looking for 44 points out, got to 64.5. So he was a really good hit overall on yesterday's slate. Then at shooting guard, we went with Lonnie Walker at $4,000, looking for at least 20 out of him. Unfortunately, only got to 3.5 points. He was a mess. He only played 4 minutes in this game and then did get hurt. He had a hamstring injury, so very unfortunate there. Obviously, if he plays his full amount of minutes, was probably going to more likely than not pay off at this price tag. And then at small forward, we had Brandon Miller, $6,800, looking for at least 34 out of him, got to 52, so he was a really good hit once again on yesterday's slate. Then at power forward, we had Cam Johnson at $5,000, was just too cheap of a price tag for him overall. Looking for at least 25 out of him, he got to 36, so a really good hit at that. And he actually only played 27 minutes in this game, and he did end up getting hurt his hip, so he probably could have even had a bigger day if he stayed healthy at the same time as well. And then last but not least, at that center position, we had Onyeka Okongwu, $5,100, looking for at least 26 out of him, got to 26.25, so he was a hit as well. So pretty solid day overall on DraftKings yesterday. The one lone miss was Lonnie Walker, who did unfortunately get hurt very, very early in that game. So as long as you had some other decent plays out there, you had a pretty easy chance of cashing on yesterday's slate. And then on the FanDuel side, we had James Harden, $8,500, looking for 43 out of him, got to 61.6, so he was a really good hit on FanDuel as well. At shooting guard, we had Cam Thomas, $7,200, looking for 36 out of him, only got to 33.5, so technically he was a mess yesterday. Even kind of with everything happening for the Nets, where they didn't have a lot of bodies remaining by the end of the game because Lonnie Walker went down and then Cam Johnson went down as well. So not the greatest day for Cam Thomas overall, but at the end of the day, was not a guy that completely killed our lineups at the same time as well. And then at small forward, we went Brandon Miller once again, $7,300, looking for 37 out of him on FanDuel, got to 52.3, so he's a really good hit once again. And then at power forward, we had Maxi Kleber at $4,500, looking for 23 out of him, got to 28.3, so he was a really good hit once again. And then at center, we had Onyeka Okongwu. He was $6,000 on the FanDuel side, so we were looking for at least 30 points out of him. Unfortunately, only got to 25 on FanDuel, so he was a miss. Really just scored the ball yesterday, had a couple of rebounds, but not much else other than that. So a little bit of an unfortunate day for him overall. A little bit more hit or miss on terms of the FanDuel side, but as long as you had some other decent plays, you still probably cashed over there as well. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to RotoWire and talk about those injuries in play for tonight's slate overall. So once again, there is 7 games in total, and it's only a 6-game main slate on DraftKings tonight. There are going to be a few teams tonight that do have a ton of injuries, so we're going to try to fly through them as quickly as possible. And then there are the 2 teams on the back-to-back. It's the Dallas Mavericks and the Brooklyn Nets. And fortunately for us, they are playing each other, so that'll make it a little bit easier as we're talking through it. So we're going to start off with the Houston Rockets. They are without Tari Eason and Fred VanVleet tonight. So Fred VanVleet's going to be the biggest one there. We're going to see whether or not Amen Thompson gets the start tonight or whether or not it's Aaron Holiday, but both of them should see increased minutes. And then for the Pacers side, we got Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Smith, both listed as questionable. So we'll have to see if either one of these guys play tonight. Obviously, Halliburton would be the one that has the biggest impact overall. Then we move over to the Orlando Magic, who appear to be all the way healthy at this point in time, which is, I believe, the first or second time in a while that they've had everybody healthy, so that is kind of nice to see. And then for the Miami Heat, we got Duncan Robinson listed as questionable. He's been dealing with a concussion. And then Tyler Hero is listed as probable. He was dealing with a migraine in their most recent game, I believe, on Sunday, and unfortunately ended up missing that game, but should be good to go for tonight's slate overall. Then we get over to the Mavericks and the Brooklyn Nets. Both these teams are on back-to-back, so we'll see what their injury report looks like as the day moves along. For the Dallas side, obviously, we talked about it yesterday. They did have a lot of guys kind of questionable going into the day. We'll see if those guys ultimately end up playing on the back-to-back or not. And then for the Brooklyn Nets, we obviously saw Lonnie Walker and Cam Johnson both get hurt last night, so we'll see whether or not they're able to go tonight or not. I would assume that Lonnie Walker is at least out with that hamstring injury, though. And then we move down to the Memphis Grizzlies, which you'll see a very, very long injury list. Once again, it's something that's happened to them pretty much all season. They had 13 guys out, I believe it was Saturday or Sunday, one of the games this weekend, and they only had like 8 guys available, and most of them were guys that were on two-way contracts, so not a very competitive team at this point in time. But in terms of the injuries that they have for today, we got Desmond Bane, Brandon Clark, Victor Oladipo, Marcus Smart, and Zaire Williams all out once again. And then we have Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman both listed as doubtful, so they're probably not playing once again. And then in terms of the questionable guys, we got Santi Aldama here, John Conchar, Derrick Rose, and Vince Williams. So we'll just kind of have to see who ultimately ends up playing out of this big group. There could be a lot of value on this team overall just because there's not that many bodies to go around, although some of these players are not very good whatsoever. Like when we were talking about playing like Trey Jamison and Matthew Hurt and, Jacob Gilliard and guys like that, we're probably not too excited about it, but there could be some potential value here at the same time just because of the cheaper price tags. And then Jake LaRavia is listed here too. He's been out for a while. I have no news essentially when his timetable to return is, so I'm just going to assume that he's probably out once again tonight. And then on the New York Knicks side, we got some pretty early news, so we know that OG Anunoby and Quentin Grimes both out once again. And then obviously Julius Randle's out for a couple weeks, and Mitchell Robinson's out till probably the end of the season either way. Although this Knicks team's been playing pretty well overall, they have a very, very limited 7 or 8 man rotation that they're playing right now at this point in time. And then we move over to the Minnesota Timberwolves, just Jalen Clark out once again. He's been out all season. And then for the Bulls, Patrick Williams remains out. Alex Caruso listed as questionable. We'll see whether or not he's good to go tonight or not. Otherwise, could open up some value for this team overall. And then we have Kobe White listed as probable due to an ankle injury. Dalen Terry is listed as probable. He missed a couple games now. And then Torrey Craig is listed as probable for tonight's game overall. He had been dealing with some plantar fasciitis and missed like the last 22 games or so. So Bulls getting a little bit healthier at this point in time. Outside of Patrick Williams, kind of nice to see there. Obviously, Zach LaVine's done for the rest of the year, though. And then we get down to Oklahoma City Thunder, who have about half the team listed as questionable as well. So Isaiah Joe's out once again. We got Jalen Williams, the forward, Jalen Williams, the center, both listed as questionable. Lindy Waters, Kaysen Wallace, Misic, Trey Mann, who's been out for a while with this personal thing. We'll see kind of whether or not he's back tonight or not. He doesn't technically have the questionable tag, but listed as kind of that game time decision at this point in time. We'll see whether or not. We should have that news probably pretty early today. And then Yuzbeng Jang and Davis Bertans both listed as questionable as well. The good news is a lot of these players don't make too big of an impact just in general. But, when you start missing a couple of them, it could make a pretty big impact on the slate overall. We could get some cheap value that ultimately does end up popping up, whether it's an Aaron Wiggins, a Kenrich Williams, someone like that. Just kind of depends ultimately who's out for this Thunder team and who's actually available for them to play overall. Then on the Utah Jazz side, they are one of the healthy teams tonight, so we're not going to talk about them too much. Move over to the Milwaukee Bucks, Damian Lillard and Brook Lopez, both listed as questionable play for tonight's game. Brook Lopez is a personal matter. Damian Lillard's an ankle injury. And then we have Giannis, listed as probable due to a knee injury. Andre Jackson Jr. is listed as probable due to a wrist injury. And then Chris Middleton still has this game time decision tag on him. He did ultimately end up missing their game on Sunday due to kind of like his knee injury management, but probably back for tonight's slate. Obviously, if we get any news otherwise, we'll have that posted down in the comments as well. And then on the Phoenix Suns side, just Damon Lee out once again tonight. So pretty much what we've seen out of them as of late. That's a quick little rundown on all the injuries in play for this 7-game slate just in general. Hopefully that was kind of quick enough for you guys. I know there was a lot for a couple of these teams, especially the Thunder and the Memphis Grizzlies. Obviously, we'll be getting some more news on the Dallas Mavericks and the Brooklyn Nets as the day moves along as well. And with that being said, all those updates as well as the starting lineups will be listed down in the comments below, so definitely make sure you're checking up down there as we do get closer to lock. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to DraftKings and talk about my core picks over there. So at the point guard position, we're going to go with Amen Thompson. He's $4,100 tonight. You're looking for like 20, 21 points out of him. He goes against the Indiana Pacers tonight. It's a good pace-up spot. There is no Fred VanVleet, so he could have the potential of playing 30 minutes tonight just in general. If he does that, he's going to look really good overall. And given that case, I would project him for about 28 fantasy points tonight. Definitely could have some upside for more at the same time as well. But then as shooting guard, we're going to go with another cheap guy in Dennis Smith Jr. $4,200. We saw him play over 30 minutes last night. As long as he's healthy enough to play on the back-to-back, would assume that he gets a pretty healthy amount of minutes tonight. There is always the chance that Brooklyn just kind of rests all of the main guys and plays like a bunch of third-string guys. They did do that one time earlier this year, so wouldn't rule it out, but should be a pretty good opportunity for Dennis Smith Jr., assuming that they do play all the regular guys tonight. Going against the Dallas Mavericks, not the greatest matchup in the world, but if you're into the whole revenge game narrative, he did spend some time with them early on in his career as well. At $4,200, I kind of have him projected for about 24, 25 points tonight. Definitely could have a little bit upside for more, just kind of depending on how many minutes he ultimately does end up playing tonight. And then at small forward, we got Franz Wagner, $7,100, looking for 35, 36 out. He's averaging 36.5 so far in the season. Not the greatest matchup in the world versus Miami Heat, but he's starting to play better once again. He's starting to play more minutes once again at the same time as well. Obviously, did spend some time on the shelf with a little bit of an injury, so it's kind of good to see him back and healthy at this point in time. Just a little bit too cheap of a price tag for him overall. Currently, I'm projected for about 38 fantasy points tonight. And then we're going to move down to power forward. We got Royce O'Neal here. He's $4,100. Once again, it's a Brooklyn Net guy going against the Dallas Mavericks. The Nets don't have a lot of available bodies that they regularly want to use in their rotation. Royce O'Neal would be one of those guys. If Cam Johnson's out tonight, he probably gets the start as well. There is a decent chance that he plays 30-plus minutes tonight. And if he does that, we're looking for about 20 to 21 points out of that $4,100. That's what he's averaging so far in the season. And then with that being said, I probably would have him projected probably closer to like 23, 24 points tonight. Every once in a while, you do get that kind of big boom upside game for him. It doesn't happen too often, but a couple times a year, you'll have that out of Royce O'Neal just in general, especially from some of those defensive stats as well. And then last but not least, at the center position, we're going back to Maxi Kleber today. He's $4,500 on DraftKings, looking for 22, 23 points at him. And with that being said, I'm assuming that he does play on the back-to-back. He's played pretty big minutes for them in their two most recent games. Obviously, was questionable yesterday, but did ultimately end up playing. As long as he's playing tonight, he's going to look like a really good option overall. Should be a pretty interesting matchup against the Brooklyn Nets, who are kind of shorthanded at this point in time as well. And with that being said, currently would have Maxi Kleber projected, probably around 25 fantasy points. Definitely does have some upside for more, as we've seen in his two most recent games. Obviously, if he ultimately ends up missing, then we probably would have some interest in another Dallas Mavericks center, kind of depending on who ultimately ends up starting today, whether it's Dwight Powell or whether it would be Richaun Holmes, who kind of started a couple games ago and did have a pretty decent game. Probably would ultimately end up being Dwight Powell tonight, though, since he's played more minutes as of late. But we'll just have to see what that situation looks like as the day moves along. But with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do have listed here, you got $26,000 remaining, just over $8,600 per player. So a good, healthy amount remaining. Definitely an opportunity to pay up for some studs if that's something you really want to do. Otherwise, if you kind of want to sit around that 9K range, a little bit less than that, and kind of balance it out the rest of the way from there, definitely something that you can do on tonight's slate overall. Some pretty decent values that are out there already to start off the day, and we might have some more that do open up as the day moves along. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks over there as well. So we're going to start off at the point guard position. We got Amen Thompson here. He's at $5,600 on FanDuel, so a little bit more expensive over there. Obviously, you got some steal and some block upside. It's a pace-up spot versus the Pacers tonight. As long as he's in that starting lineup, he's going to look pretty good overall. Looking for at least 28 out. Currently, I'm projected for 29 on the FanDuel side, but definitely does have some upside for more at the same time as well. Then at shooting guard, I got Jalen Suggs here. Either one of these two spots could be campaign if we do get news early on in the day that Damian Lillard were to miss. He's eligible at point guard and shooting guard as well. We would keep Amen Thompson there. We'd probably swap out Jalen Suggs or kind of use him as one of our secondary guards at one of these two positions. But I got Jalen Suggs here at this point in time. I'm playing a little bit better as of late. $5,500, looking for 27, 28 points. Pretty much what I do have him projected for tonight. He's averaging about 24 so far in the season, but it's been really up and down year for him. A good kind of GPP play. It's a little bit slower matchup versus Miami Heat tonight, but definitely do like the upside that he could present overall, just in general. And he's kind of like a cheaper pay down option at the same time as well at that shooting guard position. Another guy that I did kind of eyeball here was Grayson Allen at like $100 more. So if you kind of want to go with that and kind of your pseudo revenge spot against the Milwaukee Bucks tonight, you could definitely do that as well. And I guess the same theory applies for Cam Payne if you want to call that a revenge game against the Phoenix Suns, although they were kind of the team that really gave him a chance when no other team was taking a chance on them at the same time. Then at small forward, we got Josh Green here at $4,900. Played really well as of late, so he's had at least 18 real-life points or more in his last 3 games. If one of Luka Doncic or Kyrie Irving ultimately end up missing in this game, if he plays those bigger minutes, going to be a pretty interesting option. Once again, tonight you're looking for 24, 25. Currently, I'm projected for 25 tonight. Has a little bit of upside for more at the same time as well, but also does come with a little bit of downside. If he's not scoring quite as much tonight, but, he's a guy that can contribute just a little bit in other categories at the same time as well. Then once again at power forward, we're going to go to Royce O'Neal, $4,400, looking for at least 22 out of him. He's averaging just under 20 on the season so far. But once again, this Brooklyn Nets team is missing a ton of bodies. Would assume that he's in that starting lineup, especially if Cam Johnson ultimately ends up missing tonight as well. So In that case, you're looking at a guy that's probably going to play 30-plus minutes, a guy that's going to get you like 23, 24 FanDuel points. Obviously, he does have some pretty strong upside, which I kind of mentioned on the DraftKings side. You'll see those swing upside games for him every once in a while. It's not a lot of times during the year, but, 5 times throughout the year, he might get that. So tonight could be one of those potential matchups, especially from that steal and block perspective overall. Then last but not least, going with Maxi Kleber at this center position, $4,600, looking for at least 23 points down. If he's out there, if he's available to play tonight, he's going to be a very interesting option. Obviously, if he's not, then we're going to look at Dwight Powell or Rashawn Holmes, just depending on who ultimately ends up starting at that center spot for the Dallas Mavericks overall. But Maxi Kleber, pretty much what I said on DraftKings, looking for about that 23 fantasy points down. Currently, I'm projected for 25. Definitely does have some pretty strong upside for more, as we've seen as recent as his 2 most recent games. But with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do have listed here, you have $35,000 remaining, just under $8,800 per player. So definitely a lot of room and flexibility to play up on the FanDuel side as well. A lot of good value options out there, at least early on today. And we could have a couple other ones opening up as the day moves along, especially when we get some of that Milwaukee Bucks news. Like if we get Damian Lillard out, if we get maybe even Chris Middleton out, if he's sitting once again with his knee injury, we'll see what that looks like ultimately. And that could open up some value. But the unfortunate part is we might not get some of that news till later on, since that is the final game of the night. But with that being said, these are my core picks for both FanDuel and DraftKings for today, February 6th. As always, if you have any questions related to NBA DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comments below and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. I do ask that you please note whether those questions are more FanDuel or DraftKings specific, just so I can best help you as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then as always, I will be listing all the injury updates as they do come out throughout the day down in the comments below, as well as the starting lineups as they do get announced throughout the night. And then about 15 to 20 minutes prior to lock, I will be leaving my updated core as a pin comment as well. If there's any other additional changes to that updated core after that point in time, I will leave them as a reply to the pin comment as well. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, we just have NBA DFS Monday through Friday in terms of the core picks. But coming up at the end of March, we'll be starting up some MLB DFS as well as some UFL DFS. Hopefully, they'll have that over on DraftKings once again this season. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS, Parlay Play, and Prize Picks. If you are a brand new user on any one of those 3 sites, when you make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks and Parlay Play, it's a 100% match on your initial deposit up to $100. For BetUS, it's a 125% match on your initial deposit up to $2,500. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. Helps you guys out as you start that journey. Helps me out a little bit on the side as well. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in NBA DFS tonight.